Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Hello, listeners of Steering Change. My name is Kelsey Hipkin, and I will be your host today. It is that time of year again when the leaves are starting to turn and the days are getting shorter. With the approach of fall comes the school year and a familiar sight on our roads, school buses. It's those school buses we'll be focusing on today, and I have brought in some help. I am joined by AMTA's Kristin Picken. Kristin is part of our member services team and is also a school bus driver herself. Kristin and I will be chatting with Katie Marchant and Mark Critch with the Alberta School Bus Contractors Association, or ASBCA. Before we dive into school bus safety, a quick reminder to stay put once we're done today's interview to listen in on the next bracket of our Best Big Rig Movie Ever promo with myself and Rob Destree. With that, Katie, Mark, Kristin, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Morning. Thanks, Kelsey.
Katie, to start us off, can you share a little bit about yourself and the work you do with ASBCA?
For sure. So, like you mentioned, my name is Katie. I am a area safety manager for First Student Transportation. I look after the provinces of BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. And the work I do with ASBCA, I am a director. So just kind of offer support, help whenever needed. Our association is made up with a very diverse group of people, and we are trying to make changes within the school bus industry.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. And Mark, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with ASBCA?
Yes, I started a few years back as the president of the Alberta School Bus Contractors Association. And what we do really is advocate for our membership, the contractors around Alberta, to look at safety in school busing and, the funding that's required, of course, to do it. Try to work on the challenges. So recruiting, retention, all the things that come along with trying to make sure we keep those wheels rolling on the big yellow wagons.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. And Kristin, your turn. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am an advisor with Member Solutions here at AMTA for primarily the southern area of Alberta. In addition to that, like you'd already highlighted, I am a licensed school bus driver, and I have been driving those big yellow buses for over 10 years. So very passionate about what Katie and Mark have been doing with their association and just trying to lend a hand wherever I can.
Great. Thank you, Kristin. And thank you all again for joining us today. As professional drivers, it's my understanding there are certain perceptions about what it is to be a bus driver. Katie, can you elaborate on that?
I sure can. So we work very closely with our drivers. We offer them extensive training, and this goes for every operator across the province. And our bus drivers sometimes in the media are portrayed as, they bought their license, they're not trained properly. And we really want to change the stigma around what a bus driver does. Our bus drivers have tremendous responsibility. With those big buses, they hold 72 passengers. So imagine yourself driving down a highway, a busy urban road, maybe even a county road, and the hazards that come up, and you've got 72 children on there. It's not exactly quiet. You're trying to control the bus as well as drive safely. So quite often you'll hear that drivers come from different countries, and we love the fact that we get drivers from different countries. They are willing to learn, they love their job, and really create that our bus drivers have such an important job to do. They are taking our children, our nieces, our nephews, our grandkids to and from school every single day. They deal with weather, they deal with road rage, they deal with upset parents, and it's their job primarily is to get those kids home and to school safely. And one thing we would like all people to understand is that all drivers go through very extensive training. It takes about 40 hours to train a bus driver to get a Class 2 license in the province. And then there's also follow-up remedial training and check-ins. So the background of a driver, we really need to try and change that verbiage around, I'm just a driver. You're not just a driver. You are driving our future. You're driving our future to school and getting an education where they get breakfast, they get lunch, and they get social skills with their peers, and then they are going back home. So really, really wanted to focus on that aspect of it. And hopefully our listeners here will be able to go and look back and think, I really need to thank my bus driver. I need to thank my bus driver for getting up at 5:30 in the morning in -40 to make sure that bus starts and that I can get my kids to school. Even if school is canceled, we go through the routes. We make sure that no kid is left at that bus stop. We protect our passengers. We don't just drop them off. We do a sweep of the bus every single time to make sure that there's no little ones sleeping, or even the teenagers. The teenagers love to sleep on the buses. I had 2 teenagers go through, and yeah, their best part was having that 45-minute nap on the highway home. So, it's really important. They have a lot of responsibility, and they really deserve a pat on the back for the work that they do.
So much like our commercial truck drivers, to the bus drivers out there, we do see you and recognize the work that you do in keeping your cargo, whether it's kids or goods, moving safely. And with the ups and downs that come with the job and that stigma that might be related to you, Mark, how does that relate to recruitment and retention in the field?
We struggle constantly. It's been an ongoing struggle for years. It's not a new thing. Recruitment is one challenge. Retention is a separate challenge. Again, of course, I know there was a study done a few years back by one of the associations in Alberta, and at that point we were seeing 80% of the school districts in the province, through themselves or contractors, that were losing valuable education minutes because of the lack of bus drivers on routes. So recruitment and retention is a huge factor for us, and lack of respect for drivers, of course, is one of those challenges. And I say lack of respect, the pay rates, how we pay school bus drivers is just not conducive to getting drivers in the seats and keeping them in the seats. So that's one of the big challenges we've looked at. It's a part-time job. So we struggle with recruitment. We struggle with retention. We've put a lot of emphasis on it as an association and through our school districts as well, our partners there. But it is certainly a struggle.
Okay, so seatbelts are a hot topic when it comes to school buses. Katie, can you share your thoughts and experiences?
I sure can. So you are right. Seatbelts are a hot topic in the industry at the moment. We certainly understand the interest in seatbelts. In passenger vehicles, we've used seatbelts for decades. And what you may not realize is that how safe school buses are for students. In fact, every aspect of school transportation is aligned towards the safety of the passengers that we are transporting. This includes the overall design of the bus, training programs, safety laws, and regulations. It's important to remember, according to the school bus, it's by far the most safest way to get students to and from school, with or without seatbelts. School buses are 70 times safer than passenger cars and 10 times safer than walking. Because it is the safest means of transportation, we as an industry agree that we want as many students as possible to take the bus to and from school. You should also know that as an industry, we have an ongoing dialogue on how to enhance bus safety features even further. Our company, First Student, operates in provinces that both require and do not require seatbelts. If our customers require seatbelts, we make that happen for them. We work with the school districts and our industry partners to make it happen. So there is no firm answer I can give you on seatbelts. Mark, is there anything else you would like to add on the safety aspects of the school bus?
For sure. The design of the interior of the school bus is done a certain way for that purpose, and it's called compartmentalization. The seats are spaced in a certain way, close together. There's high backs on the seats. There's cushioning in the seats so that in the event of an impact, the children are protected due to that. And the other factors that have been looked at, I've sat on a few panels with this and done quite a bit of research. If you look at the issue of a school bus fire and evacuation, then you have to think about a driver now that could be incapacitated with young children on a bus, and you've got 72 children that are buckled into seatbelts. So that's been looked at in great detail, and that's a concern as well. So, there's that. There's the other thing of an impact, and the children aren't properly secured by a seatbelt, which can cause more injury than if they didn't wear a seatbelt at all, of course. So all of these things have been looked at by Transport Canada over the years. And the only mandate they've really come out with is to make sure that if you do have seatbelts, then they're properly installed and that their children are properly connected in the seatbelt and secured. So other than that, there's no perfect answer, unfortunately. I think the best answer is the compartmentalization, but it's not a perfect answer.
Okay, awesome. So then another safety aspect that maybe some people don't know about is the fueling of buses. So Mark, when it comes to fueling, what types of fuel are used and could there possibly be changes in the future?
Well, I mean, the vast majority of buses on the road would be diesel, of course, and we see quite a few propane buses and gasoline buses. And EVs, of course, have been coming on as well. There's quite a bit of funding available for those type of units. So from a fueling standpoint, safety-wise, I think they all have their challenges, of course, whether it's diesel or gasoline or propane or electric. And some of that has to do with the actual process of fueling. Some of it has to do with in the event of fire, how are these fires going to be extinguished based on the type of fuel? But I would say there's no runaway winner. I mean, there's safety issues inherent with all the different types of fuel, of course. But with regards to, air quality, we know that electric is a wonderful way to go. They have their inherent challenges as well. Of course, we live in extreme climates in Canada and hilly terrain. And so one of the challenges that we see out there is the drive times with EVs are a bit of a challenge. And what you hear from manufacturers, of course, are under perfect conditions. So if your manufacturer is telling you 200 kilometers in perfect conditions, if you're in the hills in BC or in the climates in Fort McMurray where I am, that's going to be cut in half or less potentially. So there's challenges. I'd like to think we can work together with government to work on these things instead of just looking at a broad mandate, which may not work for certain areas. So we're certainly open to that as an association to have those conversations, because I don't believe there's a one specific fix for any location at this point within Canada anyways. I mean, if you're in California, EVs might work fantastic in Los Angeles. I don't feel the same in Northern Alberta, to be perfectly honest, but I think there's a conversation to be had where we can utilize multiple fuel sources to help get us to that net zero that we want to get to.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Katie, did you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think Mark kind of touched on all those. They are test piloting a lot of EV school buses out east, primarily in Quebec. I believe there is over 150 EV buses on the roads at this time. They are hoping to branch out west. Right now, we don't really have the infrastructure around EV buses in Alberta at this moment. So it may be a thing coming forward. A lot of our fleet are propane and diesel. We do have the smaller buses, our type A buses run on gas, but the majority of our fleet are propane and diesel. And the propane is very efficient in the extreme colds because propane is a cold gas as a product. So we have a lot of success with our propane units up here, especially in the colder climates.
All right. Katie, with school starting up soon, if not already, what are some tips for the motoring public when it comes to sharing the road with school buses?
Well, the biggest thing is, especially if you're coming from a rural setting. So for instance, I live in Turner Valley, Alberta, but operate in different major cities, is that we have different laws, different bylaws in different cities that we operate in. So as soon as I come into Calgary or Airdrie, or if I'm traveling in Vancouver or out on the island, is that when you see that stop sign out, that means stop in both directions. Now, when I go into the city, it doesn't have the same effect. So when you see those flashing lights in the city, it means that kids are either getting on or getting off. You can proceed with caution, but the last thing we want is for anybody to get hurt at a bus stop. We also have to remember that we have a lot of little ones and even some older ones that may be riding that school bus for the first year. And it is really important at those bus stops to enforce our safety standards that we have. Always look ahead. If you see your group stop, there may be some little ones in there with some big ones, and they have never taken the bus before. Yelling at our bus stops and the kids does not help. Trying to pass a school bus because nobody ever wants to get stuck behind a school bus is not usually the safest thing to do, because we do have runners. We do have kids that think they can just run across the street. And that would be my biggest thing, is make sure that you know the rules of the area that you live in. Look for those flashing lights. You can't miss a big yellow school bus, and be safe in those school zones. School zones in Calgary are 30 kilometers an hour now. If you go out to Okotoks, it's only during school days. So really keep an eye on the jurisdiction that you are driving in, and watch out for all those little kids that are going back to school, riding the bus for the first time. And if you have problems on your school bus, talk to your school and talk to the school bus transportation company that's providing that service for you. We have a lot of great methods to help reduce any sort of issues on the bus with student management, and also any diverse needs or special needs that we may have. We have accommodations that we can help with. We're just a phone call away.
Awesome. Great answer, Katie. I'm going to throw a question at you guys just from everything that's kind of been said today. Katie, earlier you did touch on training. Kristin, I'm going to start with you, and then we're going to throw to Katie and Mark. But what does the training process look like to become a bus driver?
I'll have to jog my memory here, as it was quite a long time ago, but my training looks very similar to what is still offered today. And that is a week in the classroom. And you are being taught not only the rules of the road and Alberta transportation rules when it comes to operating a school bus, but you're also being taught student management. So you are being given those tips, those tricks, and how to work with children in a productive way. Conflict management is something that is touched on. Anything that you need to know, the safety and training team really does hit on that. In the classroom is when you're also taught that fundamental part of operating your school bus, which is your pre-trip. It always has to be conducted before you get into a vehicle. And then the second week of training, you are on the road. You are on the road with a competent trainer for almost all day. Training is done throughout the year. Mine was done in December when there was 2 feet of snow on the ground. They do not stop. They are constantly moving and training. I passed 2 buses today on my way to the office that had their nice student in training banner on the back, and they were working with brand new drivers. So when Katie said 40 hours, she wasn't kidding. It is intensive, and it is every day. So I found it very beneficial, and it stuck with me. It's probably why I continued to operate them for over 10 years. So, yeah.
Anything from you, Katie and Mark, to add to Kristin's?
No, Kristin nailed it. I mean, we do have our government licensed trainers. So that's been a change in the last few years when MELT got brought in for Class 2. And it's something I fully endorse. All our trainers go through extensive training to become a licensed Class 2 trainer for the province. They go through extensive knowledge tests and then behind the wheel testing with a government employee. And they have the opportunity to become senior driving instructors, to train other trainers. And then we also have our school bus endorsement program, the safety program that is on top of all the training that we do. MELT was removed for Class 2 drivers, and they are still testing for the MELT procedures through driver examiners. So we still actually are really essentially training MELT with the addition of some of the skills, so our drivers are extremely proficient. Our training hours are a minimum of 37.5. It usually boils down to about 42 hours for the average driver, and then they get their road test after. So it is, like Kristin said, it's a very extensive program. We're really proud of our training programs, and we're really proud of our drivers.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Anything on your end, Mark?
Yeah, I think, start to finish the process, certainly 40 plus hours, we'll say driving, but there's the whole component of recruiting and then interviewing and reference checking, background checking. And, we do child intervention checks and criminal background searches. And of course, we pull the abstracts. And so there's a very in-depth program that goes into this before we even put them into the training program to get them on a bus so that we ensure the kids are in safe hands. And to echo what Katie had said about the training process to become a trainer now, it is very stringent and very difficult to become a professional trainer these days. And we applaud that. We want it to be a career that only has the best out there teaching our new drivers. So we do a great job. I don't think there's many industries that do any better when it comes to trainers and training new drivers.
And I'm going to stay with you, Mark, as we start to wrap things up here. We have covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you'd like to add on the school bus front?
For sure. We talked about quite a few great topics and recruitment, retention, respect for bus drivers, all those things I want to really hammer home. I want to leave a little story that I've told quite a few times, that one of my drivers in rural Alberta, he was driving one of his high school students one day and the last two on the bus, and she had worked at the local grocery store, and she said, I make this much per hour. And he opened his eyes and he said, wow, that's more than I make as a professional school bus driver with all these responsibilities. I don't think we respect our school bus drivers around Canada or in Alberta nearly enough. It's not treated as the career it should be. We don't pay them enough. We don't give them enough benefits. We don't respect them near enough. And I'd like to hammer that point home to listeners and to our government officials. We need to take care of these people. They have enormous responsibility. They're great professionals, and we just need to do better. And one final point from me, we are hosting our second town hall meeting in Edmonton on October 3rd. And we did it last year with great success. We had representatives from transportation, education, school board trustees, school board officials. So it really is to bring everyone together in one room to try to address the challenges we're facing with school busing in Alberta. So October 3rd in Edmonton will be the town hall. You can get information astac.ca, astac.ca. So please check it out.
Thanks, Mark. We'll add that to our show notes as well. Katie, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. School buses tend to kind of fall to the wayside when it comes to our heavy vehicles out on the road. And I value the partnership we have with AMTA, and for you guys giving us this opportunity has been wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Katie. And Kristin, Picken, anything on your end?
I just wanted to add in a little applause for Katie and Mark, if I could, just touching again on the retention, but from the driver's side, and wanting to let everyone know, if they were ever interested in a prospective career as a school bus driver, that the associations and contractors, they really do value you. To stick with it as long as I did, and honestly got in because of some of the advantages of driving, where you can take your small children with you on the bus. It's a great career for moms and retirees, people that are looking to get back into doing something. And then I think you stay. But Mark hit it right, and so did Katie. We are the people your children see first in the morning. We're the ones that they see when they get on the bus after school. And sometimes when they're just having a really bad day, we're who they talk to. And I wanted to just let the general public know that they're right. The school bus drivers do care. Personally, I made it my mission to know the name of every single child that got on my bus. I knew what activities they were into after school. Even some of the parents I have a great relationship with still, and we do care. And you can talk to us, and we can try to help in any way that we can. But appreciation for your driver is key, and just making sure that you guys know that we really do care. We're not just sitting in that seat as a job. We're sitting in it because we believe in it. And some of us are so dedicated that I'll probably drive a big yellow school bus when I'm 95 years old to the AMTA. So yeah. And I want to thank Katie and Mark for doing this. I've loved working with you guys for the past 10 years and hope that we can continue to do so. And I think we have a great relationship now, association to association, and even professionally. So thank you guys again for this.
And on my end, thank you as well. I'm really feeling the school bus love here today. We do really appreciate you guys being on. I have a feeling we might have you on in the future as well, just because there was a lot of important information shared today. So I'm going to wrap up with the three of you, and to our listeners, please be on the lookout for school buses and students on the road. We will now throw to Rob Destree for our latest Best Big Rig Movie Ever bracket segment. Rob.
Good day, Kelsey. How are you?
I'm well, Robert. How are you?
I am great, thanks. What movies are we reviewing today for the bracket challenge?
Today we have White Line Fever versus Over the Top.
Going to start with White Line Fever, a 1975. We're going way back.
After returning home from the military and marrying the love of his life, Carol Jo Hummer buys a new rig as an owner-operator. Pulling back the curtain on shady shipper dealings, Carol Jo bands together in support of his fellow truckers to get them a fair chance, endangering himself in the process. Ooh.
So I liked when you had, you took exception to the movies where they weren't wearing seatbelts. Can we talk about the open alcohol in this one while driving the truck?
As a safety association, we do take exception to all things breaking the laws, particularly drinking and seatbelts, but yes. And we will add, this is another trigger warning for racism, just for anyone who hasn't seen this film before.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of terms that we cannot and should not ever use nowadays. Again, different era back then, but yeah. So I'm going to go with the couple of positives that I took from this one. Slim Pickens. I love Slim Pickens. The guy is fantastic, right? If he's not riding a nuclear warhead down to Earth or leading a band of cowboys, he makes a sketchy truck driving. Was he the dispatcher? Part owner? Can't remember. But anyways, I love
the businessman behind the desk.
Right? But still had some morals, which I quite liked. And then you had Martin Cove. You had Sensei Kreese getting his butt kicked quite frequently in fights. So he must have taken the karate training later on in his career. So I did enjoy the very young Martin Cove. I think he was 27 at the time they filmed that.
I will give you Slim Pickens, and my other perk was that Carol Joe's truck was called the Blue Mule. I thought that was a nice touch. But this was a bad movie.
It was so terrible on so many levels. So let's go. I mean, Martin Cove, wooden acting, wooden karate. Jan Michael Vincent, slightly better acting. Never made the Hollywood leading man level that they thought he was going to. I did like Kay Lenz's Jerry Kane Hummer, his wife. She was pretty good in this. But yeah, we're going to go with 1.5 CB radios. And one of those is for Slim Pickens and half is for Martin Cove.
And I am a 0.5 CB radios out of 5, merely because we didn't decide whether or not we could give a film 0.
Okay, so we both agree that it was a terrible movie.
Horrible.
All right, over the top.
Unlike our next film, which is one of the cinematic masterpieces of 1987, Over the Top, starring Sylvester Stallone.
And some bald guy.
Lincoln Hawk has been estranged from his 12-year-old son for the last decade. We don't exactly know why, other than Hawk still regularly writes his wife, but is unliked by his rich father-in-law. From her deathbed, Hawk's wife encourages him to meet his son, so the two take Hawk's old truck to Vegas, where he is to compete in an arm wrestling match, with a brand new Volvo bunk truck on the line as top prize. Rob, what do you think of Over the Top?
It wouldn't be an 80s Sylvester Stallone movie without a training montage, and it's in there. Him and the kid doing the workout at the front of the truck. All we needed is a great theme music for that one, like Eye of the Tiger. That would have been great in that one. Yeah. I mean, you had Robert Loggia as well, playing the evil grandfather. So he was good. I had a hard time with Stallone in this one because he's trying to be what's the word I'm looking for here?
Stallone?
No, I mean, Stallone, you expect a bit of bravado from Stallone in pretty much any of his roles. This one, he tried to go too far the other way on this scale, and it just felt like he was reading his lines in a library. I don't know how better to put it, but he's like, okay, Sly, we need you to ramp down the machismo in this one. Okay, and that was where he went with it. Other than that, cute story, dying mom, Robert Loggia, evil grandfather. At the end when he's doing the arm wrestling and he wins and Loggia's in the background going, yeah, okay, you're a good guy. All right, I'm like, this is everything out of the 80s.
So tender. I freaking love this film. Much like The Wizard, it's a sentimental. This is one that I grew up watching just on Sundays when there was nothing else on. Big fan. And yeah, there are definitely some Stallone-isms. We have the training montage. And then we also have the interviewing the experts. They do a scene where they interview all the different arm wrestling competitors. And it's pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. But the evil one, I don't remember who was the actor that played that one. Oh, he's not showing. Yeah, he was particularly awesome. Was his character Canadian, or was there a Canadian character in there?
There was a Canadian in there, yeah.
Oh, was he the one drinking the motor oil?
He was in the semifinals.
I like the one drinking the motor oil. That was awesome. And then full disclosure, this is one of your favorites. As far as I can recall, I've never seen this movie till just the other week.
Oh, see, I'm just here with gifts.
You are the gift that keeps giving.
This had a 32% on Rotten Tomatoes. What say you, Rob?
I'm going to be more generous with this one just because, again, Loggia, Stallone, montages. I'll go 3 CB radios. I'm going to be generous on this.
And I am a 4.5 out of 5 CB radios, strictly for my childhood love for this film.
I can see that. I can see where you'd really enjoy this one. Not Stallone's best role, certainly not his worst role. One of the characters, Smasher, I think was that the one he went up against?
The guy with the hair, right? And yeah.
The guy's name, Magic Schwartz.
Well, obviously, they should have
And
just left it at that.
I'm going to leave it at Magic Schwartz, the Smasher.
All right, fans of Steering Change and films in general, let us know on our social, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, which of these films deserves to move on to the next bracket. And speaking of, this is the end of round 1, so we will have our finalists and be moving on to round 2. So you will be hearing more from Robert and myself, but as always, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change Podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change Podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Do you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change Podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change Mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram with the hashtag Steering Change, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.